Okay, so this is the data architecture for volunteers for Salesforce. So you have your normal campaign. So a campaign is like your event if you were going to have an event that you needed volunteers at, or it could be the example we're going to do today is for an organization that has equine therapy for people with developmental disabilities. And so they have lesson volunteers. So they have sidewalkers and horse leaders. And so I'm going to make the campaign lesson volunteers. And then underneath that campaign, you stack volunteer jobs. And a volunteer job can be at an event. It might be, registration desk, auction runners, various things. Here it's going to be sidewalker and horse leader. And then for each of those, there are shifts. So it might be 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. lesson, and they need a sidewalker and a horse leader. And those shifts are associated with that volunteer job. So that's a separate. Then we have job recurrence schedule. So for this example, we will be creating a job recurrence schedule because these lessons are on a regular basis, Monday through Friday. And then the volunteer hours are what's logged against the contact. So the contact is the volunteer, and the hours that are associated with that shift get then assigned to that contact. So when they sign up for that shift, you start to be able to track the volunteer hours through that object, through that table. And then similar to the job recurrence schedule, you can create a volunteer recurrence schedule that ties into the volunteer job. So you can have one volunteer, if Susie Smith comes to your clinic or whatever you have every Monday from 3 to 5, like clockwork, that's her thing. She does on Monday, 3 to 5. Then you don't need to sign her up every week. You can create a volunteer recurrence schedule so that she has that job filled every time. So this job is filled by this volunteer through this volunteer recurrence schedule, and then her hours are tracked here, which she's filling a shift of a recurring job. So it kind of like brings it full circle in terms of the data architecture. Because they have volunteer in the names of the objects, it can get kind of, I guess it doesn't really get that tricky. But the job recurrence schedule versus volunteer recurrence schedule, because they both have recurrence schedule in them, that's what that means. Where's my mouse? There it is. Bringing it to the next screen. Okay, and so what do we do with volunteers for Salesforce? Like I said, we're gonna manage the jobs, track the hours, set up volunteer skills, and we'll be able to manage shifts through this, like I said, from campaigns. And then eventually we'll have this web sign up form with some of the Visualforce that's built in to Salesforce. And then I haven't really, if somebody here has done this self-reporting hours page on a volunteer's personal site, I'm not going to show that today because I don't know how to do it. To be completely honest, I haven't walked through it, and I would be reading it and trying to do it at the same time if I did it right here. So our use case for today, let me stop the slideshow. What if I just closed PowerPoint? Yeah, okay, that worked. So like I said, stride ahead. We're gonna start with setting up the campaign, lessen volunteers. In order to do, before I get ahead of myself, in order to have volunteers for Salesforce on your instance, you do have to have Nonprofit Success Pack, but you also have to install it from the Salesforce. I don't know what to call it. The NPSP configuration site. Here, this is it. So getting to this is through a powerofusforce.com site, but I just got it through Google. This is also how you can, if you wanted to install NPSP and hadn't yet, Salesforce install. This is, because I don't know the links off the top of my head. And then Power of Us has the instructions. So same thing with volunteer management. So you can just type in NPSP, volunteer management, Salesforce install, and you'll get to this article. And so this install or upgrade, I installed this package on the website that we're going to use today last night, because it does take about 20 minutes, so we wouldn't want to really sit here. But then what we start to do is it just walks you through configuring it from an admin set point of view. And the only thing we have to do before we create our data right now for the steps to get to this is I want to add the volunteer skills that are skills located on the contact object. So I'm going to pull over our site, our developer. Oh, this isn't a developer org. This is a sandbox, because this is a real org.
Hey, Sarah, a question.
Sure.
When you download the Volunteer for Salesforce and then you're going to go to configure it, you're configuring it towards your nonprofit's needs. And so you already have like you already know what your skills are going to be and things like that? Or is this something you have to think about prior?
Oh, you have to think about it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there like
I had to think about it, and to be perfectly honest, this particular nonprofit is run by volunteers and still hasn't really given me a good sense of what their volunteers do. So what I did was I Googled other equine therapy nonprofits and saw their volunteers and their volunteer descriptions. And so I'm just going to pretend that's what they do too.
Right.
And I think that will be the case when I present it to them next week. We'll see.
Wow. That's a challenge.
I did, if y'all haven't used draw.io, that's what this thing, that's where this came from. So I just looked up, I found that most equine therapies had sidewalkers and horse leaders. And what they did give me was this fairly messy spreadsheet. I don't know where it went.
So this is off the org. You're thinking about these things and drawing up what skills you think you'll need, what shifts you'll think you'll need.
Right. So like this. So this is the job, and these are the shifts based on. I'll go ahead and pull up the. Well, they gave me a crazy spreadsheet. You don't need to see it, But basically, what they're doing right now to sign up volunteers, and I don't know how much they're doing it really because of COVID, because the thing that they sent me was from February. So I think probably their volunteers are more likely just like riding the horses and things like that, so they don't get bored. But it basically, what they're doing for their volunteers is they're using MailChimp to send out a link to the Google Drive spreadsheet for the week. And then people type in their names to the different lessons for the different shifts. And it doesn't tell you what job they're going to do. It's just, they're so small that they just know, I guess. Like I said, it's been like pulling teeth when you're working with one staff nonprofit that doesn't really understand the questions you're asking them, and it's a free. I'm doing this for free, so that's lesson learned for me. I've tried to ask questions a bazillion different ways, but I need to figure out how to make it way more structured for a very small nonprofit of people who are mostly older women who
love horses.
So,
Sarah, is Draw.io free, or do you have to buy that?
Oh, Draw.io is free, and it's very useful if you're mapping stuff out. Like, I really like it for flowing. Like, I've done it for the flow of like how leads are done and things like that for other organizations that I've worked with.
It looks pretty easy.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. So back to my original question, in starting to configure this, you should know your skills and your shifts. Any other things you should know ahead of time if you can?
Well, the job, what jobs you want to put in.
Right.
So the end result is going to look something like this. So this is a different demo org I put together. The one that I tried to show last week and it had too much data in it, I cleared out the data. So at the end, once you have set up shifts and jobs and things like that, you'll be able to have this calendar, which then on you'd be able to sign up on a website. You give code to your web developer and make it look pretty like this. And so these jobs, I would be able to go to this calendar, click on one of these jobs, and have a sign up form. That's where we're getting to in the end. So you do need to know, what is this job? I need an optometrist. I need an ophthalmologist. I need a clinic volunteer, somebody to work at the optical shop. This was a vision clinic use case. So this is where we're getting to. So you're going to need to know your volunteer jobs. You need to know the shifts. And if there's any volunteers that are going to be on a recurring schedule that they come every week, you got to go know that. But we'll just step through it step by step. So Lightning Wheel of Death happening right now. Let's see if I refresh it. Well, if I can't get it to do it in a second, I might switch to Classic. Because I'd hate for you guys to get held up here just because we're trying to add a pick list value. Then that's what I tell people who complain about the lightning taking too long, is to take deep breaths, take 5 deep breaths, and if it still doesn't happen, then they can switch to Classic. So I'm gonna switch. So we'll go to the contact object here and fields and go down to volunteer skills. And I'll go ahead and leave in manual. I'm going to leave in all of these because maybe they will need those at some point. But I want to add the side, I want to add horse care, physical, well, it said manual labor, horse care experience. What else would an equine therapy need in somebody's skills for volunteers? I pulled it up on a website, like I said, but now I have so many browser windows open.
Do they need to know first aid for an animal?
Oh, that's a good thought. First aid. Anybody else have any ideas?
Taking
How
care
about
of tack, saddle, bridle.
What?
Taking care of the tack, the equipment, saddles, bridles.
I hear somebody has more.
Cleaning the stables, maybe.
What?
Cleaning the stables.
Mucking out the stalls.
Okay.
People do actually need to work out the horse, like actually ride them to give them exercise.
Right. What do you call that? Oh, horse riding?
A rider, yeah.
Skill, right? Okay, because I wouldn't volunteer to do that. I wouldn't even volunteer to do the sidewalking, probably. I'd be a little scared. So we're gonna have those skills available to us now. I'm gonna go back to Lightning. We'll go back from here. So now, remember, we were gonna create the campaign. That's the first step for this. So apparently I have to give. So if you don't see new on campaigns, even though you're a system administrator, that doesn't mean that you have permissions on campaigns because you have to have the marketing user checked off on your user. So I am going to search for my name up here. And click on edit. Marketing user. So I think that should fix it. Might take a second. Yeah, it's still updating. Okay. We'll do a shift refresh. There. So that was the problem. I wasn't a marketing user, so I couldn't create a campaign. And we're going to create a volunteer campaign. This record type automatically creates when you download the package. So I didn't have to create the record type. It was already there. And it's going to be called said it was going to be called Lesson Volunteers. I'm going to make it active. It is I'm going to make it other right now. Maybe we can go back in and we'll make it planned for now. And the start date, let's start on Monday. And let's not end anytime. And then the volunteer website, this is an organization in Decatur, Georgia, where I'm from. So, New York.
Shouldn't you
So
then
once
put it
you
in the
create
description?
the volunteer, the campaign that's a volunteer campaign, you can see the related lists of volunteer jobs. So we want to go ahead and click new from here, and we'll create our sidewalker job. And then make it ongoing, display on website, because we're going to want that. And then go back. America, New York. And then, well, I don't see our skills available. Oh, I guess I didn't add it to the volunteer job. I just added to the contact. Okay, well, we'll just put manual labor for now. And this is so you have skills on the contact, and then you have skills on the volunteer job. So when you're trying to find somebody with a particular skill, so if you had an org with thousands of volunteers, and I need to get somebody with computer skills, or you had some kind of really specific skill, or like the clinic example that I had before, I need to find a doctor volunteer. So that person, I can search by their skill and their location. If I needed a doctor in Atlanta, then I could search by vision doctor and Atlanta when I'm looking for volunteers as a volunteer coordinator. And then the other one is called horse leader. It's ongoing volunteer, it's manual labor, and it's on the East Coast. And then once you create your volunteers jobs, the next step is going to be to create the volunteer shifts. So the spreadsheet they gave me had, even though some of them weren't filled in, they had shifts every hour, Monday through Friday. So that's what we're going to create. So if I go to now one of those volunteer jobs I have, volunteer shifts is related to that. So click on the related tab, and I click on new shift, and the start date is going to be Monday at 10 a.m. for 1 hour, and I need one volunteer, or let's just say we need 3. Maybe there's 3 horses. And then I'm going to save this. Now, that's how you manually create one shift. But let's try to create a job recurrence schedule. So this is going to be Monday through Friday. And it's going to be available every week. And we're going to start it here. And then let's just go ahead and do a scheduled end date. I'm not sure. I have to read what happens if you don't. And the duration is the number of hours. So this is going to be the 12 p.m. shift for 1 hour. We want 3 volunteers every week, every Monday through Friday. And I'm going to press save. And now if I click on this job recurrent schedule and I look at the related, you can see all the volunteer shifts that automatically created. So that's what I would suggest if you have something like this, where I have to create a shift for every single hour, Monday through Friday. So I wouldn't want to do that manually. I'd want to create a job recurrent schedule, since this is the day-to-day operations of this nonprofit. And then after that, this is where this is where we can start to follow the configuration. I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of what you can do straight out the box before you even set anything. But if you want, we can skip right down to doing the website piece of it. Is that what are most people interested in learning?
I think that website would be interesting.
Okay. So the first thing we're going to have to do is set up our Salesforce site. So we can do various website activity, but the first one would obviously be to create the actual sign up page. So how many people have set up a Salesforce site before? Okay. So what we're going to do is go to our instance here. And go to sites.
Sarah, what else can you do with the sites?
For the volunteer sites?
For, yeah, any of the, what other features could you have?
I think you can have a shift calendar. You can almost have like a community where they have their own personal site.
Right.
That sort of thing.
Do you use it anywhere else and other than the
I haven't used it. I've only used it in Trailhead and things.
Right.
Actually, the first thing when somebody asked me to volunteer on their Salesforce system 5 years ago, when I didn't have any Salesforce experience, this is what I tried to do. And I got really pretty far, considering they didn't have, at the time, there was no Trailhead. But
right.
We're going to call this Stride Ahead Test. So you have to pick a name for your site. And I don't want to pick Stride Ahead because I'm going to do that on production. So just in case, I'm going to check the availability. This is available. So I'm going to register my Salesforce site domain.
Also, Monica asks, how is this different than communities, the site?
It predates communities, so it's free.
Ah.
And it's all, a lot of it's controlled within Salesforce. Excuse me, I need to turn on my fan. Okay, so now we created the site domain, but now you create the site on the site domain. So we're going to create this as our volunteers site. And I'm going to bring up the instructions. I'm going to be the site contact. That's just who's going to be in charge of it. We could put /volunteers here. for the web address. And then they give you some site home pages out of the box, and they're Visualforce pages. So as you're up, you can select the under construction page, or there's already a volunteers sign up one right here. So basically what this is doing is it's giving us our fields on the website without you having to program any HTML or anything. It's going to put in those fields that are connected to our Salesforce via this Visualforce page without you having to code the Visualforce. And then you want this guest access. Now they have it, there's an allow framing, should be, yes, allow framing by any page, no protection. That's what you want to set it to so that your guests can access it. Because otherwise, and this is so that you can put it in an iframe on your website. That's what the framing is. And I'm going to just double check the instructions, the longer instructions here. Too many pages open. Where did it go? Oh Lord, I'm sorry guys. I'm just gonna press save. The default web address and custom web address must include unique values for each site. Where's the custom web address? Volunteers 1. Oh, let's see if it created it when I press save. Okay, that's what happened. It just didn't tell me that it's saved. That sometimes happens with these older packages. So now this site has been created, but it's not filled in yet. We haven't, it doesn't work yet. And I need to bring up the instructions, so I apologize. Like I said, I have COVID, so I kind of didn't prep for this as much as I would have liked, so I apologize.
Hey, Sarah, we appreciate it.
But basically, there is a trailhead for this, so that's what I would suggest is, but I would actually suggest you go ahead and do the developer thing and just Google volunteers for Salesforce, because I think probably this documentation and configuration is actually more, it's more direct. So if you have some experience in Salesforce and don't need the trailhead explanation for everything, then this kind of will help you get further. And you can see it has the basically the diagram I showed you at the beginning, entity. But if we go to customize your website, and what we're doing is the volunteer signups. So they're having you, before you do the step that I did, they're having you configure a web sign up workflow rule. And this is gonna, so a full shift would display a sign up link because the web signups haven't been counted yet. So I guess what this is doing is making sure that the sign up, if you have the shift calendar, that it updates in the connection. So I'm just going to follow the instructions unless somebody else wants to chime in, and or if you'd prefer me to just show you the one I already set up a while back, I can do that too. Oh, it looks like there already is one. So maybe with the new, as your point, Mark, maybe with the new update of the volunteer success pack, you don't have to do as many of these steps that they have where you're creating a workflow rule. They're having us call it volunteer hours. Let's see if there's one called volunteer hours. Set end date, start date. Okay, maybe this one isn't set up. Okay, so volunteer hours is an object. So we'll go and press next. And this rule name, we're gonna call volunteer web signups. And if the volunteer hours status equals web sign up, we're going to add a workflow action. And it's going to be a new field update. And we're going to call it convert sign up. And then we're going to make it volunteer hours status, specific value, and confirmed. And save. And then we click done and activate. And so if they sign up on the website, then it'll set their volunteer hours to confirmed. Does the architecture make sense? Does this kind of make sense how it kind of flows and what you would do to set up volunteers for Salesforce for the people on the call?
This looks kind of related. It kind of looks like the setup is not that dissimilar to web to lead. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Very, very similar.
So from there, you get the code and give it to your web developer,
Exactly. Mhm.
kind of polish and shine it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the key, one of the things that I didn't see when I set up the site that I was expecting to see, and if somebody else has done this before, let me know, is the guest site user is the profile that goes into the form. Oh, no, it's not the profile, it's the user license. So if I was going to set up a user, the user license, I'm sorry, guys, I'm a little. Anyway, it's straightforward. I feel like it does take a little bit of setup and being able to I think that the website piece and following all the steps, that's one of the harder ones, but it is steps to follow. Like Ben said, it's similar to web to lead. You give that code that ends up and you give it to your web developer and they'll be able to embed it. And that first thing we pulled down where it was allow framing by any no protection, that's what you have to set it at to be able to have it iframed in the website.
And so that's what connects your website to the Salesforce
Right.
volunteers, right?
Exactly.
All right, that's the connector
Exactly.
piece, right?
And you saw that it came with various visual force pages. So those visual force pages will do things like show the calendar. And so you create the different pages for the site to be able to see it and be able to have them. If I click here, then I sign up for this shift.
Yep. Denise asked that we see that field update again. I guess the contact
workflow
field.
rule I just built.
Yeah, that was to switch it from web sign up to confirmed, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just to change the status automatically when they come in as a website sign up.
Okay, perfect. I'm volunteering with an org who had a question about how to do that. So
Okay. Yeah,
That
and
is
I
really
got that
helpful.
straight from, I just was following the directions straight from the documentation. So this configure volunteers for Salesforce. Anybody, this is what I'm going to do for the stride ahead. I'm just going to walk through it as best I can to set it up for them. So does anybody else have anything they want to plug or any questions about other NPSP problems they're coming across?
I'm just curious, if you were to make like an event or a volunteer job, there always has to be a campaign associated with it?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Let's try. I mean, we can try to create one without one, but I didn't. So the app is called Volunteers. So if we're going back to the app, you type in volunteers here. So this is where your volunteer coordinator would live. Volunteer jobs. So if we try to create one just new, the campaign is a required field. So you could make that something as simple as 2021 volunteers. Like if you didn't really want to campaign it all out, this is just the required jobs, the required structure via Salesforce.
Okay, thank you.
So
I
think-
joined.
Oh, go ahead.
You finish your thought. I was going to change the subject a bit.
No, change the subject. That's
Oh,
fine.
I was just going to say, I'm sorry I joined late. Thank you for having this meeting. And I'm doing an implementation for a nonprofit that has volunteer hour. They are planning to implement volunteers for Salesforce, and they have volunteer hours from another system that they want to bring in. And we wanted to do this in a phased way, but we want to get those volunteer hours migrated right away, even before we fully implement volunteers for Salesforce for them. So I just wanted to ask if anyone had any best practice recommendations on that. I see that we have to set up the campaign and the jobs.
Well,
I could just dump the hours into the hours object, but I think it's probably best to connect them to jobs and to a campaign.
Yeah, I would. I wouldn't overthink it. So I would download the package and then create, like I said, like a 2020-21 volunteers campaign. So you only have to deal with one campaign, and then create a few jobs. Don't worry about the shifts. I think you don't have to worry about the shifts. Let's see. Let's try to create. Let me go and try to create. You might have to worry about the shifts. Let's look at that PowerPoint I had up earlier with the things. But I would go ahead, if they're going to use Volunteer for Salesforce, go ahead and download the package and then do it in a sandbox and play around with it. So just and do a very simple flow chart like I had, like just the simplest you can think of. Okay, this job, let me create some shifts. But if they have, so the volunteer hours, is it just the spreadsheet they have of volunteer hours? Is it just okay, Sarah did 3 hours?
It also has a start and end date, which is usually the same, but sometimes it's over a range of time.
Okay, so let's just walk through it. So if I was going to go to a contact, I don't know if this, yeah, we don't have any contacts yet. So I'm going to create a new contact for me. And then save. And it'll create my household account. And so it doesn't look like volunteer hours is on my page layout right now. Let's see if it's on this other one where I already set it up. Yeah, it is. Okay. So if I wanted to put new volunteer hours on this that I already have, the required fields are job, start date, end date, and status. So you'd want to do a number of volunteers. So this is a date field and a time field. So what I would do is download this is what I would do if I were you. I'd download the package into the sandbox. I'd create a campaign and a volunteer job. Then I'd create one, like I'm doing right here, I'd create one volunteer hours record because you won't have any in there. and then I would put the hours worked. And once I save that one record, I'd pull a report of the volunteer hours object or contacts with volunteer hours and pull all the fields and the columns and headings and export that to make it your to make it your template for importing the contact hours that you already have.
That's great advice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. That's my typical hack when I have data to load in and I'm not exactly sure of the required fields. I just go ahead and manually create the records with all the required fields and then pull a report. So then I know which ones I have to fill in when I load the data. Okay, well, I know this is a little shorter than, on other ones, we've kind of kept talking on other stuff. But if nobody has any questions or wants to like go over any use cases, we can cut it kind of early today.
It might be good to cut it early for you, Sarah, so you can recoup and get 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. So we plan on having one next week, which is
Yes. Does anybody
the 12th.
the 12th?
Yep.
Yes, sure. And we had talked about going over flows, people had different ideas of what they want to have. If you want to put that in the chat or just put it in the LinkedIn group. Is everybody who's here on the LinkedIn group?
No, but would love to join.
Okay, excellent. So Mark, could you put that in the chat?
I sure can.
Thank you.
Yep, I put in 3 or 4 people in this morning.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's awesome.
I want to let Sarah rest also, but I just wanted to introduce myself and say I'm super happy to have found this group, and I'm interested in partners who want to help me with tasks small and large with my independent consulting jobs with small nonprofits. And I'm especially also interested in donation coding, the stickier parts of donation coding, like donor advised funds and soft credits and
I can
workplace giving.
Does anybody else want to hear about that? Because I can go into that with my CDC Foundation stuff. I've done it on other weeks, Dottie.
If you have a recording, I could listen, or if you want to do it on a future day.
Sure. I see yes, but please, if we're only feeling up to it, I'll do it quickly because it's a beast. I understand, like, trying to figure it out when I came in. So basically what happened with the CDC Foundation is COVID. So they were founded by Congress in 1995, and they have been smaller, not very small because they're related to the CDC, but they mostly do private and public, or have been doing private-public partnerships to fund programs that the government can't afford. So the CDC says, oh, I want to do research on this and that and this and that, and then they put a proposal into the CDC Foundation, and then the CDC Foundation puts it in their process to start raising money for it if it's approved. So if they already have, like, oh, we know Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation will fund that, then they go ahead and do that. And they go ahead and fund it. Oh, wait, I should do a test. I should do a developer instance anyway. They'd be kind of mad at me. Here. All right, just so basically, Dottie, what I did was, because they have a lot of, they got all these donors because of COVID. So once March hit, last year they had 752 individual donors, and between March and April they got hundreds of thousands of new individual donors, and a lot of those came through. So for those who might not be familiar, Nonprofit Success Pack has the ability to have kind of nested opportunities. So if you have an employer giving campaign through the platform Benevity, Benevity will be the check on the gift. So a lot of times, so what the CDC Foundation does is the hard credit or the account listed on the opportunity is Benevity. And then and then there's something called account soft credits and partial soft credits. So the account soft credit would be then the employer. So if it's Levi Strauss is the employer, and then partial soft credits would be all the employees that make up that one big check. So each of those contacts, each of those employees are contacts, and then they have a gift next to them. And what the difficult part is, Daddy, in terms of that, are the customizable roll-up fields. So can you explain your use case and what's going on with what you're trying to do?
Well, I really want to preserve your energy. So I think for the moment, I would like to focus on what you just said about Benevity, because the organization I'm helping to implement right now is grappling with this question. And their person who does all of this, her argument is, why do we care that it came through Benevity? I want to put the donation right on the donor record. And I'm saying, okay, how about you do that and account soft credit Benevity, so at least we know that it's connected to Benevity. And she's like, we don't even need to keep track of that. So there's these at least two different ways to do it, and I'm looking to help advise them.
Did you look at an article or something that told you the best way to do it? Because if you Google like NPSP DAFs, and for those who don't know, DAFs stands for Donor Advised Funds. There will be lots of articles on how to handle. So, like I just found one right here on Salesforce.org, a new NPSP feature for nonprofits to handle soft credits. So they added extra features, but I've found articles that recommend how to handle donor advised funds. And I did this, I looked for them after CDC Foundation already has their setup, right? So that had already happened with Cloud for Good. There was another consultant that had come in and set up their structure. So they were advising to do the platform, then do an account soft credit to the employer and a partial soft credit to everybody on the check. I get what she's saying though, because they want us to list because they have to report to Congress and stuff. They want us to list Benevity and these platforms like Tiltify is a platform that is related to TikTok and PlayStation. I don't know much about video game fundraising, but as part of COVID, there was some video game fundraising that went on. And so we have, and this is where it was needed to have it structured like this. So you can give her this example. We have to put the hard credit to Tiltify where the check came from. and then there wasn't an account soft credit that goes along with that, because then there's just partial soft credits that go along with that. So if you want to really structure it, when you have all these different types of platforms to be consistent, I would say you'd want to start at the point where if you grew, it would be consistently the same where the platform and who the check's coming from. Especially the other thing is if you end up eventually going into a accounting system. So that's where it's really important too, because you're matching the name on the check and the account where the funds are going to be deposited on your accounting system. So that one-to-one match is going to be important the more integrations you do. So from a development recognition needing to know standpoint, yes, but then you're going to have some inconsistencies if other platforms, you're going to have the hard credit be from Facebook or Tiltify or something like that, because you don't have complete donor data. Because even for the Tiltify, we can't put all the partial donor data onto the check. The partial soft credits don't add up to the total because a lot of them we have their username. Like we don't even have their full name or their email. So, you know, I don't really care about this sparks that or whatever you'd make your username, you know, grease monkey or whatever. Like that's not going to be helpful to you to put into Salesforce. So I think that's how I would explain it. It's just for growth reasons, not necessarily from a fundraising development standpoint. I totally get what she's saying. Like I wouldn't care.
I'd love to chat with you more about this sometime.
Okay, sure.
All right, well, thank you, Sarah, for this week. And I guess you'll take recommendations for topic of next week?
Yeah, totally.